Hi, everyone. This week we're talking about learning. And basically, learning is a change in behavior due to experience and practice. So something has to change. Okay. Now, you like to think of learning as reading and writing, but it's much more than that. We've learned how to feel about things, we learn uh, how to think, how to act. Uh, Example of, and it has to be experience and practice. So you can learn how to limp, but you take an acting class and you learn how to limp and look an actor in a movie. And my brother recently began to limp because he fell and broke his hip. Well, that's not the same thing. Okay, learning takes experience and it takes practice, and so we're learning every day. Our feelings are changing, our actions change, our thoughts change. I'll give you an example of a change many years ago. Luckily for me, uh, I was talking to one of my editors, an editor of one of my books, and she said she'd had a great day. And I said, "What happened?" And she said she had a car accident. She hit a deer on a road in Maine, and it was a great. And her car was wrecked. I said, "Gene, that doesn't sound like a great day to me." And she said, "Well, I wasn't hurt, and my dog wasn't hurt, so I considered it a terrific day." And that really changed the way I thought about things. Uh, Maybe in your 20s you're a little bit gloomy sometimes. But after that, I changed how I thought about life and the world. That every day something may happen, and I'm still alive, and my dog's alive, and my friends are alive, and family. I thought, okay, that's it. That's a good day. So if you change, you can change the way you see things. Another change happened when I was in my 20s. I was in a bookstore, and there was this strange-looking guy at the desk, hair sticking out on end, kind of slovenly. And I was looking at books, and I came upon this book on astrology. And I said, "Who buys these books? Who believes in this nonsense? Planets and affect your life and your behavior. I mean, who kind of idiots buy this?" And he said, "Madam, is it your life?" And that guy's brought me up short. I realized it wasn't my life. What do I care who believes in astrology? I mean, I care if you do because you've had the scientific method and you know that we need evidence for things, and there's no evidence that the planets affect our lives. But if you want to believe it as just a fun exercise, that's one thing. Uh, but it really made me realize well, who am I to judge another person? It wasn't my life, and that's what happened. It was a really good lesson to learn in my 20s, so that I never did that again when somebody said something that I thought was ridiculous, which people do all the time. Uh, so you're changing every day. You're going to school. You're not going to see these things the same way you saw them before you became educated. Now, there are many, many types of learning, as you will see as you're studying this subject. Uh, the, the earliest studies were called classical conditioning, which was Pavlov and the dogs. And he found out that learning occurs by association. They brought the dog salivates when he saw food, and then Pavlov realized that the dog salivated when he saw the guy that brought the food, and then if you clanged the bell and then fed the dog salivated when he heard the bell. So we learn by association, associating one thing with another. And my dog Marlowe, who now deceased, he slept under my desk for 12 years, and I usually work with no shoes on, just wearing socks or stockings. And I would walk around the room, or I'd go get a cup of coffee. I'd come back. I'd do this or do that. Marlowe never budged. But the minute I put my shoes on, Marlowe got up from under the desk because he knew the shoes meant he's going for a walk. So he associated the shoes with walking. All right? Didn't associate me carrying a cup of coffee with walking. He associated the shoes with walking. So that's what happens in learning. You associate one thing with another. Okay? You smell a perfume and you think about the woman you were in love with, some of you, maybe, if you're lucky. All right? Uh, we never see a Hershey bar. interestingly, I think about my grandmother. My grandmother's been dead for 60 years. But every Friday of my life, she brought me a Hershey bar. So when I'm in a CVS and I see a Hershey bar, I think, oh, grandmom, right? So that's an association that occurred 60 years ago. And that's what often happens in our lives. Uh, Another kind of learning is operant. You do things and they're rewarded. You think, oh, chances are you're going to do them again. So you say hello to somebody. Hi, how are you? Oh, fine, thanks. How are you? So you think operant. Oh, I operate. You operate on the environment, and the environment responds. Now, suppose you said, hi, how are you? And this person said, screw off, don't talk to me. Chances are when you see this person again, you're not going to say hello to him or her. So there's things you operate on the environment responds. All right. And then it changes your behavior based on whether you got rewarded for that response. Now, that could be a little tricky because I used to have a colleague many years ago who was grumpy. And when I walked past his office, I'd say, good morning, and he would slam the door or say something nasty. Now, you would think I would not say hello again, but I got a kick out of it, so it was rewarding to me to annoy him. So every time I came by his office door, I said hi, and then he slammed the door. And the next day, hi, slammed the door. It just amused me. So even though it was a negative behavior, you can get a reward out of it, negative reinforcement from that kind of behavior. So it can be a little tricky. A kid annoys his mother no end, and she thinks, she yells at him, and he keeps doing the same thing. He may be getting something out of it. He's getting her attention at least. Then maybe he couldn't get her attention for doing something positive. And that's one of the things about children. If you can't give them attention for doing something positive, they may do something negative and get your attention. Okay, so that's learning occurs, for positive reasons and negative reasons. It can get a little tricky. So that's operant conditioning. Another type of learning is social learning, observational learning. You see something, it interests you, and you think, I think I'll do that. Kids do all the time, teenagers. My nephew has arguments with his daughter sometimes about her clothing styles, how she dresses. But she's observing some Taylor Swift or somebody on television or some teenage idol. She's not observing her mother. She doesn't want to dress like her mother. She wants to dress like some rock star. And then what happens when she dresses that way? She goes to school, and the kids say, "Oh my God, you look adorable." Chances are she's going to wear that outfit again. If she went to school and the kids say, "Oh my God, it's ridiculous. You look creepy," chances are she will not do that again. Now, you do see some kids who look pretty strange, and you think, what are they getting out of this? But you have to tell yourself they're getting something out of it, or they wouldn't be doing it. Okay? So they might have hair sticking out on end, purple, green, orange, tattoos from head to toe. You think, what are they getting out of this? Something. Mark my words. All right. So observational learning is a key way we learn. There's the famous study of a Bobo doll, this big plastic blow-up doll, in which adults hit the doll. In one group, the adults hit the doll. In another group, adults did not hit the doll. When you brought children into the picture, the ones that saw the doll get hit beat up the doll. The ones who did not beat up the doll. Okay. Now, when you think about parenting, where does somebody learn how to parent? Usually, guess what? From their own parents. Now, what if those parents use punishment to raise kids? Hit them, yelled at them, screamed at them, insulted them. Well, that may be the only thing you learned about parenting until you came to school or observed somebody else's parenting and you thought, boy, that's a lot better than what I had. All right? Now, it's very hard to say to yourself, God, my parents really should not have done that. That wasn't the right thing to do to kids. But they didn't know any better either. They learned it from their parents. They learned it from the world they lived in. Now, you live in another world. And you have to say to yourself, well, that's what I learned about parenting, but I'm learning something better about it now. And we do know from all the studies, the research, that punishing kids and hitting kids and insulting kids doesn't get you the behavior you want, which is really interesting because if it did, you wouldn't have to do it again. But if you have to keep yelling at your kids for the same thing over and over again, you think, wait, this isn't working. Well, we know what works with children is modeling, observational learning, modeling positive behavior, and reinforcing the behaviors you want. All right. So that's another type of so social learning is an extremely important way that we learn. There's also latent learning. Latent learning you don't even know what happened. Somebody says, why don't we go to Starbucks? I wonder where Starbucks is. And you say, well, there's one 3 blocks away. Now, you didn't even realize that you knew it was, you didn't even consciously learn that. You've just been driving across town and noticed that Starbucks. And when you needed it, it popped up into your head. All right. So my point to you is you want to look at these different types of learning. All right. And realize that it's always going on every day. Every day. I mean, think about your emotions. Where did you learn how to behave? How do you deal with stress? How do you deal with a failed romance? How do you deal with a relative you don't like? All these things that every day you have to deal with. How do you deal with people at work? What have you learned about work? What did you learn about being a student? Last semester I had a student who I was in the middle of a lecture. She stood up in the class, and she walked in front of me, and she walked to the trash can, and she put her trash in the can. And I said to her, where did you learn that student behavior? Okay? When I went to college, we wouldn't even think about doing that. We would, if we were even late for class, we snuck in the back and hoped the teacher didn't see us, the professor. And we're like little mice. Okay? But I've seen students come in late, go out, I have to go to the bathroom, I have to do this, I have to do that. I call it student behavior. Where does a person learn how to be a student? All right? Where did somebody learn they could get up in the middle of a lecture and walk to the trash can and just walk right and back in front of their professor and sit down? They had to learn it somewhere. But how did you learn how to be a student? Think about that. What are your study habits? All right. I was the kind of student, if I got an assignment, I had to do it the day I got it and get it over with because I hate things to be over my head. There's other people, some of you out there, who wait till the very last second. The assignment's due at midnight, it started at 11:45. All right? Where did you learn to be that kind of student? Important to understand that. And I'm not judging you. You'll either get an A or an F, depending on how fast you can do assignment in 15 minutes. But think about, how did you learn to be a student? Did your mother make you do your homework? Did you have to do it before dinner, before you had dinner? Could you do it whenever you wanted? Did nobody ever ask you about homework? So these are things I want you to think about when you think about learning. How did you learn to be male or female? How did you learn to act on a date? I was in a restaurant before the pandemic, and I'd see a man walking in front of a woman down the aisle of the restaurant, and I'd think, God, in my generation, a man would never do that. It was always ladies first. When did that change? And where did people in my generation learn ladies first? Maybe from movies. Most people in my generation smoked because everybody in the movies when I was young smoked. People smoked in the movies. People smoked on airplanes when I was young. I remember when I was in my 20s smoking on an airplane. Well, so things are always changing, guys. So where did you learn? I'm always fascinated. When did this change come about? When did our social learning change? When I was very young, and you walked on the boardwalk at Atlantic City, you had to get all dressed up. You wore a hat and a suit and jewelry and gloves. Now people walk on the boardwalk and they look like, I don't know, like they go into Ringling Brothers Circus. When did that change? That's a social mores that changed. So, but my point to you is things are always changing in society, in our lives, and we change with it. We learn new things, for good or bad. We're always learning new things. So I really want you to think about what you've learned in life, who taught it to you. Think about these people that went to the Capitol to overthrow the government. Who were they following? This mysterious person named Q who does not exist. And I wonder when they're sitting in prison for 20 years if they're going to think to themselves, what possessed me to think that I could overthrow the government because I listened to some character that does not exist? I think there'll be a lot of regrets when people find out that they believed a mysterious person, non-person really, and got them in all this trouble. And remember, they were also reinforced by other people who believed that. Like, this is a great idea. We should go to Washington. We should overthrow the government. We should go into the Congress and wreck the place. This is a really good idea. What would possess them, and where did they learn it? What did they think? How did they come to think this way? This is the subject of learning theory, and this is what we're fascinated about. So enjoy this week's lessons and think about it.